Hello, everyone. This is Cole from the American Journal of Healthcare Strategy. I'm joined by an administrative fellow at one of my favorite institutions, an institution I've been a fan of for a long time, Johns Hopkins. And I'm joined by Muhammad of Johns Hopkins, an administrative fellow of, I think you've been there for almost a little over a year now, right?
Yeah, yeah. Just completed my first year. We just welcomed in the second year admin fellows. So thank you for having me, Cole. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I've taken some certificates through Johns Hopkins and I love the faculty. I've connected with some of them on LinkedIn. And so I think it's really cool to be able to have you on. And you also have a lot of vast amount of experience outside of Johns Hopkins as well. So it's very exciting to have you on.
Yeah.
I want to go all the way back there to the University of Memphis, right?
Yeah.
That's an area of the country that many people on the East Coast might not be as familiar with. So, introduce us to how you got at the University of Memphis and what led to you getting your degree in health services management.
So I was born and raised in Memphis. So there's a funny joke that once you end up in Memphis, it's hard to leave Memphis. So once I started applying to bachelor's program, I was saying I was going to go here, there, but Memphis was home, and my friends, family were there. I was really trying to figure out for a long time where I wanted to go career wise. I changed my degree a few times. And I decided to do healthcare admin. There wasn't At the time there was no real reason. I just felt like, you know what, they help people, but they're not clinical, and I'll just decide to do it. And then spiral from there. I just kept going deeper and deeper into the field, and with that, my love kind of increased, and my passion and drive for it kind of increased as well. And here I am now at Hopkins, which is just a blessing every day.
And you were clearly successful with that choice in undergrad, right? Because you graduated, cum laude, honors college, dean's list. You did very well, and you got into, a top school for your master's. It must have been kind of the right choice for you early on, right?
I mean, it was. I think sometimes like God puts you in places that you don't expect. I was doing really well in school, and then after I graduated was during COVID, and jumping a little bit into the work experience, because that was kind of what honed into how I ended up in Michigan. Actually, was because I started off as a COVID screener. In Memphis, there wasn't a lot of jobs hiring. I know you remember that, Cole. There wasn't really, especially for an entry level, recently graduated student. So I started off as a COVID screener, taking people's temperatures, and it was ended up becoming, I was working as security too with the security team, and I saw a lot of tough situations, with COVID happening, with the physician stress and clinical burnout with nurses and staff. It was kind of an emotional time, and there was a clinician who saw me every day. I would work long hours because COVID, everything shut down. And so he saw me every day, and he said, you're here every day, why don't you work at my clinic? I said, okay, why not? He said, I'll teach you as much as you need to know. So I started working there, and that was a great experience as well. It was a cardiovascular clinic in Memphis, and he taught me about CPR codes, and ICD-10, and I was very much infancy level of knowing anything about healthcare. So he really took the time to build it up, and then from there I ended up at Baptist Medical Group as a referral specialist. And from there I saw a lot of, as a referral specialist, you're kind of the middleman for patients, for the clinics, and for the insurance. And I saw a lot of disparities, and I saw a lot of patients not getting scheduled, and I started seeing a trend of which community they belong to. And I started realizing they were women from my community, from the Muslim community. um, and sorry for jumping a little bit ahead, but it was because I talked to the patients, because you had a tab where you closed out the patient form after you give them 3 calls. The patient's not responsive, you close it out just to keep the log going and the track going of the flow of the referrals. And I called one of the patients up, and I said, how come you're not seeing a podiatrist? And they felt comfortable once I said my name, and they said, well, Mohammed, in our culture, it's not very comfortable for a woman to see a male person who's not of their family. And they said, I don't feel comfortable seeing a male podiatrist for my foot issue. And then I said, well, there's female podiatrists. And they said, really? Because they're, in Memphis, comparatively to East Coast and West Coast and Midwest and even Texas, the Muslim community is very new in Memphis, just immigrated. So, I got her scheduled with the podiatrist, and then I started noticing trends. It kept going on and on. And I said, you know what? I want to make a change. I have no idea how I'm going to do it. And then I learned about healthcare admin, and I applied to Michigan like a throw in the dart. Like let's see, God knows best. And the interview went perfect. I interviewed with a person who had the same passions and interests in healthcare as I did, and it didn't feel like an interview. It felt like a conversation like me and you are having. And I've just been spiraling into healthcare ever since.
That's beautiful. And I love when students have that, usually they do get that motivation. Sometimes it's after graduation, before, 10 years after. But I love when, you get it early on, because I think it makes those interviews easier when you are so passionate about something so important like health equity, especially when it's personal to you, right? Because you are a member of this community. You're an active member of the Muslim community in Memphis, right? You were active, and then you went on to continue to do that at Michigan. I want to ask, what was the transition like geographically? Michigan's quite a ways away from Memphis, right? And it's also very different weather. So I have to ask, what was that transition like?
Cold, the winter beat me up. The winter beat me up. I couldn't do it. But no, I mean, it was hard, right? I was born and raised in Memphis. Just like you said, I was very involved in the Muslim community. I was very involved in Michigan. I continue to be here in Baltimore, but I didn't know anything about moving anywhere. I had lived with my parents my whole life. I was scared. I was nervous. And I don't know, like, again, you end up in places that's where you belong, right? So when I started in Michigan, I didn't know anything about healthcare. I had just worked a frontline job as security in a small clinic and then a referral specialist. I didn't know anything about, never did an internship, never talked to executive leaders before. Um, in Michigan, I met the right people. I met some really good friends, and they were Muslim, and some who weren't Muslim. And, they were fun with me. They were patient with me. They, kind of just allowed me to fall a lot. And I felt a lot, and they just instead of just saying they're laughing at me, they're like, all right, let's, continue the process. And, I was encouraged to kind of dream a bit, and see, I guess, explore and learn from other people, because people in Michigan are just so qualified and so, intelligent, just not just professionally, but personally. So it was kind of like every day, kind of like a mind blown type of thing. I felt like a small town kid going to big city, even though I was in Ann Arbor, which is also small town. So
Wow, that's impressive. Yeah.
yeah,
I think that's a great, in kind of a great thing to show as well how important it is to, if possible, expand your horizons and do
yeah,
things that you're uncomfortable with, right? Because you were very successful when you were there. You founded organizations. You went on to work with the Department of Public Health there. You did a lot of different things that really shaped you into who you are now. What are some of the things that went on at Michigan that really stand out to you, that's impacted you the most?
yeah. I mean, like you said, I start not to toot my own horn, but I helped start or started Muslim Students of Public Health, with a great deal of support from the university and the different students who were part of the board. Um, it was a very tough time because there was a lot of gun violence and different epidemics are happening, and some people don't refer to gun violence as a public health epidemic. And there was a lot happening in our community, in the Muslim community. Certain topics are taboo, because the immigrant population is still learning about you know depression is a mental health illness. These are different things that affect us, and these are things that we have to talk about. And I'm glad that I helped start that, because I know the next president after me was an incredible leader, and he took that to next levels. And I hope it continues to go. And even before I graduated, a student reached out to me and they said, I'm considering the University of Michigan, because I had never heard of a Muslim Students of Public Health. They said no other public health university or any other public health program has that in the pamphlet. So Michigan was very supportive about it. My time in Dearborn, I mean, me and you were talking about a bit. Dearborn is very diverse for those who don't know. Michigan in general is, which people are obviously shocked about, because it doesn't come off as that. But Dearborn is diverse. I mean, a population where most of it has roots overseas, a population that is, has a large Muslim community that are from all over the world. It has a large Christian community all over the world, large Jewish community all over the world. I mean, I think 70-75% are Arab or, Middle Eastern born. And so when you drive around Dearborn, you're seeing Arabic signs everywhere. So Dearborn Public Health Department is a fun fact, is the first public health department created by, the mayor. Now in a small city like Dearborn, so they had the Wayne County and Detroit Public Health Department, but this was separate, to focus on their issues. So
Wow.
they had issues with, flooding. They had issues with opioid crisis, homelessness, everything you can think about, mental health, and this community really didn't know how to combat it and didn't really know what tools were needed.
Mm.
So being there as a fellow, I worked with an incredible leader. His name was Ali Abazid. For those who are watching, please look him up. Incredible man. And he just said, listen, he said, we have a bunch of issues. He said, you're fellows. He said, but you guys tell me how we're going to solve this. He said,
Wow.
he said, you have full reign. He goes, use any case study you need. Look at any other city. He said, let's get to work. So let's pull our boots up. He said, let's figure this out. He said, because if we don't, who's going to do it? And so I said, okay, I want to work on flooding. He said, all right, go ahead. That's very unique thing that people don't really say. And I said, I want to work on flooding. Let's work on flood mitigation. He said, okay, go ahead, Muhammad. So I was a part of a team of 4 or 5, all incredible people. I hope that they're watching and thinking about this. But I said, you know what, let's work on flooding. And we worked on coming up with a pilot program for permeable pavement, and for those who don't know what permeable pavement is, it's concrete that absorbs rainwater and funnels it down instead of it staying on the surface. So concrete, usually comparatively to dirt, doesn't allow water to drain very well. So we worked on a permeable pavement program or project, a pilot, and see how much it would cost the city to go forth with it. And it our ideas were never brushed aside. We talked about rain gardens, how rain gardens can be beneficial, not just from an aesthetics point of view, but also from a city infrastructure point of view, that it can actually absorb a significant amount of water for these. And if we had rain gardens at every neighborhood, then instead of the water being funneling and building up on someone's lawn, they're funneling down and going straight into a rain garden, building up a garden in its place, right? And we never, Ali and Abdullah Hamoud, both of these guys, incredible leaders. Again, if anyone's watching, please reach out to them. They're great men and mentors. They never made me feel like an idea was dumb. They never said, well, Mohammed, we're not in New York, we're in Dearborn. They never did that. They said, okay, how are we going to do it? And, there were other fellows who worked on incredible things. Even now, if anyone looks up Dearborn, they're working on air quality metrics. A small city like Dearborn is working on air quality metrics and tracking, and you as a resident could click an app and go straight into looking at the air quality. I mean, and for those, it's Dearborn Public Health Department. Please check them out. They're just incredible, innovative leaders and future leaders in healthcare.
And so, how old, if you don't mind me asking, were you at the time when you were redesigning the city's,
I was
flood?
22.
You were 22?
I was 22, like almost turning 23. Cole, I didn't know anything, but these guys, this is how you teach young people, is kind of not throw them in the fire, but give them all the emotional support to say, here, I'm here if you're going to fail, but, don't think you're going to fail, because we're going to get to this and we're going to come up with results. And that gave me all the confidence for me to say, okay, let's get this started. So,
Wow. That is a very unique experience.
yeah.
I think that we're probably going to have a lot more interest in Dearborn after this episode, because people are going to
Go
really see
visit.
the opportunity there. That's incredible.
Yeah, Dearborn's an incredible city. Go see the coffee shops.
I've been watching videos, as I mentioned, and I'm a big coffee lover. And
Yeah.
in North Carolina, during our international festival, I always enjoyed the different kinds of coffee they would have. And so, hearing you talk about it as well, I'm very intrigued.
Yeah.
I'm very intrigued. So after that, you did end up going to Johns Hopkins, but how did that process start? I think the first question is, why did you decide to do an administrative fellowship in the first place?
If I'll be honest with you, Cole, I knew that I didn't have much experience in a healthcare system or hospital setting. I wanted to continue to be a learner, but I wanted to have the responsibilities and autonomy also of helping build up something, being a part of projects, being a part of any type of system work whatsoever. So I knew I wanted to do a fellowship. Now, Hopkins was a dream that I couldn't even dream about type of situation. I applied to numerous fellowships, I think 8 or 9. and Hopkins was one of them. But you just do it just to say, I'll try, right? Um, I decided to do it last minute because I was just like, I'm gonna do it. You know what? I'm gonna see if I can do it. And then it ended up working out. By the grace, I'm blessed for this opportunity. I had the first round interview. I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead again. I had the first round interview, and I was so nervous. I was just like, I booked a room in the library. I went there, and the interview happened, and I was nervous. I was kind of sweating, and then they they all had smiles on their face, and I was like, oh, everyone's smiling. Okay, I'm gonna smile too. And they started asking me questions and really trying to get to know who I am. And one thing that was unique about the fellowship was also, beforehand they asked, can you send a personal letter of recommendation as well as a professional and academic? So I was just a little bit, already like, personal letter of recommendation. And the interview felt like they wanted to get to know me as a person, but also see my capabilities. And I remember after the interview, I was like, did I do good? I think I did bad. All right, I did bad. And I went and took a nap, Cole. I fell asleep because I was like, I think I did bad. And I'm kind of even more bummed out because I thought they were all good people and
Mm.
great people. And I'm bummed out. And I started walking to go get dinner to meet with some family. And I got called. And they said, hey, Mohammed, are you interested in coming to round two
Oh,
in
wow.
Baltimore? And I was like, yeah, yeah. I was like, yeah, I'll do it. I don't care what day. I don't care if I have a class that day. I will come because that was something where I wanted to explore and really meet and see what type of people are there.
You and me were talking about this beforehand as well, is that during that application process, you had this kind of debate going on within yourself and with some of your mentors, whether to include some of the Muslim things that you had established, the institutions, and then the activities in your community that you had done, whether to include that on your application or not.
Yeah.
And you said you decided to include it. Can you talk about why that was a struggle and how that impacted your application?
Yeah. It was a struggle because, there was a person I respect a lot and I still respect his day. He's a great human being. And, this was just, he just told me, he said, I'm not sure you should keep the Muslim things in your resume. I was kind of taking a step back and he just said, listen, like, what if people don't see it the same way you do and it may come off weird or a certain way, or you may fall into a bracket. So I thought about it. I was just like, man, what do I do? Because this is who I am. I mean, and this conversation we've talked about it. I This is just who I am. This is why I'm in healthcare. And I remember someone had told me, someone again who I respect a lot, and he said, listen, like, if you're applying to an organization or an institution and you have to take any bits of yourself out, whether it's your morals, your values, and the reason you went to healthcare, maybe that's not the institution for you.
Hmm.
Maybe that if they said no to it because they saw it, maybe that's not somewhere you belonged. And maybe, the door may open for another institution when they see it, they may actually be happy and intrigued by it and want to explore more and hear more about your story. So I remember for the resume, I included it, and I included it with Hopkins, and I even touched about my family story in my personal statement. Again, it's a little bit off topic, but my grandfather had a severe stroke because of diabetes in India. It left him paralyzed, mute, and blind for 8 years. It was all over just his blood pressure. They didn't
Yeah.
have that healthcare literacy. So all of this is tied from my background in India, being from India and being Muslim is all connected to why I'm in healthcare, and taking it out didn't feel right to me. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna apply, and if they want me, they want me. If they don't, they don't. And and I think we'll talk about it later. But in the final round, it worked out for the best. I mean, I think that's what sold me for Hopkins was they accepted me for who I am.
So that second round, right?
Yeah.
That's not the final round, right? They do a third.
The second round is the final round.
Oh, the second round is the
Yeah.
final round. Okay,
Yeah.
so then, and that when they do, they fly you into Baltimore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And have you been to Baltimore prior to this?
I was like 6.
Okay, so this is kind of your first
Yeah.
adult impressions of this.
Yeah.
And so, what was your impressions coming into Baltimore? As you know, it's a city with some real public health
Yeah.
crises, but also some great public health innovations. And so, what was your mindset coming into it?
I had a big smile on my face. I was
Yeah.
happy to like, anyone. I never thought someone would pay for my hotel for me or fly me out. I never thought I would ever have the opportunity to be that because I don't know, maybe imposter syndrome, but I never thought I would be
Mm.
that type of person. And when it was happening, I had a big smile on my face. I was actually FaceTiming someone, showing the hotel and everything.
Yeah.
Um, but Baltimore was different. It reminded me of Memphis, and I felt like
Yeah.
a little bit at home. I was like, this is kind of like Memphis. It was just a bunch of the people here. There's a different way they walk, they talk. It's a little bit southern, like the type of hospitality and the modesty that people have here is just it's kindness, and sometimes obviously you'll run into rude people, but it reminded me of Memphis where I said I might want to explore this more. And so that was my first impressions going into Baltimore, and it was just incredible experience.
Nice. And then how nervous were you for the second round, right? Because the first round you were sweating, you were
Yeah.
super nervous, but you knew they liked you the second
Yeah.
round. So how was that for you? Was that easier?
The final round, it kind of like I was playing with nothing to lose. It felt like because I just
Okay.
said, I made it farther than I thought I ever would. Um, but I was a little bit nervous. I had a little bit bigger beard at the time, and so Cole, you have a great beard yourself, and I was like, should I have trimmed this? And I remember saying to one of the fellows, like, should I have trimmed my beard? And they were like, they looked at me like I was crazy. They're like, no. They said, your beard looks great. And I remember the kindness of the fellows I shown, like the previous fellows, um, and they just were like trying to get to know us personally. And I remember it just kind of took me out of that mindset, like, oh, this is a stressful situation, because they kept reiterating to us. They said, you are capable. You're here because we thought you were capable and qualified. We're
Mm.
just trying to see who will fit with us personally and emotionally for our organization institution. So then at that point, you're just kind of like, okay, they think I'm qualified. Johns Hopkins thinks I'm qualified. So anyone in the world might think I'm qualified. So once I got there for the final round interview, and actually walking through the doors, I was excited. I mean, I have a story even from the whole interview process. I have a hilarious story about that too.
Oh, please share it.
I walked through the door, and there was a table. It's a square table. All the executives are sitting over there, our executive sponsors over there, the program director. And I walk in, my suit is a little bit bigger than me, it's a little bit big. And I look at everyone at the table, and I walk right through the door, everyone's smiling. And that was the first thing. I was like, oh, they smiled in the first round, they're smiling now. Okay. So then I shake the first person on the right side of me, I shake his hand. And I was like, it's kind of weird if I don't shake the second person's hand. I shake his hand. I said, well, now I look weird now shaking a third person's hand. I said, you know
Yeah.
what? I'm going to walk around the table and shake everyone's hand. So I walked around the table. Hi, my name is Muhammad Qadir. And they would introduce themselves. And I sat down. I remember they were like, well, Muhammad, we were going to do introductions first, but I guess we did it, but we'll do it again. I was just like, yep. I
That's
was like,
awesome.
I am embarrassing myself.
That's
um,
great. I think that's the best way to embarrass yourself, right? Is by giving a warm introduction.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad they thought it was warm. And then they asked me, and they said, "What do you think about Baltimore compared to Michigan?" And I was like, "Man, it's heavenly here." I was like, "It's warm here." It was cold in Michigan right before I got there, so it was 40 in Michigan. It was 60 here. I said, "This is heaven to me. I see the sun." So, and then a little bit continuing on, they asked me a question that you asked. They said, "What's a little bit connected actually? What's the proudest moment in your career?"
Mm.
I was just like, man, what's the proudest moment in my career? And I said, you know what? The proudest moment in my career was when I was a referral specialist in Memphis, Tennessee, and I helped that woman and a few other women who are from the Muslim background get scheduled for a patient. And I told them the exact same story. And every executive at that table smiled. And every executive at that table told me that was an incredible story. And I'm
Mm.
telling them a story about something that affects being Muslim and then the Muslim community and Muslim demographic. And mind you, 3 4 weeks ago, someone had told me to take this stuff out of my resume. And here I am at Johns Hopkins fellowship interviewing with executive leaders, and I tell them that story, and every single one of them is smiling and
Mm.
telling me that was an incredible story. That in that moment I said, man, God, if you don't give me, if I don't get this fellowship, if I don't anyway end up here, I think this may be the biggest heartbreak in my
Yeah.
professional career, because these people truly care about me in the short amount of time they've known me, and they truly care about getting to know me.
That is a beautiful story, and I think it's so important that people bring their full self to work, but sometimes it can be very scary and very challenging with the problems and the prejudice that we see going on. Throughout your career, you've done really well at this, though, right? You've always, it seems like, brought in yourself, your full self to work. Why have you been good at that? How did you learn to be able to be proudly who you are?
I had a lot of great mentors. Even now, I mean, Hopkins has a lot of great leaders, but they have a lot of great mentors. I mean, it's really a learning center. It prides itself on being an academic medical center. But like Cole, when I tell you, I mean, people want to see you learn. I was telling the first year fellows that were coming in today, I said, even if you make a mistake on your project work, they may not, there may be expectation that you give executive work. They want to see that you're there every day. They want to see you're emotionally attached to the institution, and they want to see that you're, asking questions and learning. If you're fulfilling those three things, you are probably, you're a great fellow, because the work will follow. Your development of the projects or programs you'll work on will come. You'll make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. Even senior executives make mistakes. But the great thing about Hopkins, and for those who are listening, is there's a lot of great mentors. You know, some of my mentors, and I want to say them are Dr. Sisson. He really has taken an investment in me professionally and personally. There's been great preceptors I've had, Matt Lausenheiser, and so many different leaders who really pushed me to go places that I never thought I'd go. And Tracy Disk was the program director, gives you responsibilities of works that I never thought I would ever work on. And Dr. Ishii as well. And there are people who really want to see your investment, not just professionally but personally, and they know that you have the potential to do it even if you don't know. And for me, I even now I have imposter syndrome. I'm like, man, how am I here at Hopkins? How am I with some of the most academically intelligent and just top of the line leaders, clinically, research wise, administrative wise, and they don't see themselves like that. They said, Mohammed,
Hey, you're one of them, Muhammad. You are one of these top.
I mean, I thank you for that. Maybe I need to tell myself also, but it's still like pinching myself a dream. These guys really care about your development, and so I can't speak on other people's experiences in other places, but I know this has been my experience here, and I just can't imagine myself anywhere else or ending up anywhere else.
Wow. I really do appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. I think it's going to inspire a lot of people. It inspires me as well, especially where you've been upfront about your identity, and we, you and me both, we encourage people, whatever their identity is. Really, we need more diverse people
Yeah.
in these fields, and you've done a lot of work on that, especially. What can you give to maybe fellow Muslims like yourself
Yeah.
who have been in similar positions as you? Is there any encouragement or advice you can give them, or people just have diverse backgrounds in general, on
Yeah.
how to get into this field?
We need you guys. I mean, we need everyone from every different background because, and I talk to a lot of kids about this, or young learners or people my age. I try to encourage them to go into public health because public health really encompasses a lot. You know, at the time, when you want to do medicine in our community, when you want to do medicine, you can only be a physician, a dentist, and that's really a nurse. That's it. There's no such thing as being in public policy. There's no such thing as being in hospital administration. I mean, I have stories amount of times. I can write a book about how many times people are like, "What is hospital admin?" Healthcare consulting, this field, healthcare facilities. I may be missing a bunch of different, healthcare economics. There is so much in healthcare. And if we're tapping maybe 2% of it, we're not really impacting the care for all, and we really need to broaden for everyone from diverse backgrounds. And even those who are clinicians now, we need people to work on a multitude of different things. I know there's a lot of burnout and a lot of stress, but, after a pandemic, I mean, we see, what has happened to the world. I mean, the world is only getting bigger and scarier, and, we need leaders here, when you're a part of a community and who the community's background, that there's a lot of elderly in a certain area, there's a lot of children in a certain area, and you're at the table, And you could say when they're planning a strategic growth about where ASC should go, where ambulatory emergency care, or maybe even a hospital, you can say, I know my community from my Muslim community or my neighborhood or this or that over there has a very large 60 plus elderly community that was not in the graphic that you showed.
Hmm.
So can we explore that background, that population? Maybe they need an ASC over there, or an urgent care there, or pediatric care there. And if you're not at the being a part of that conversation, you can't expect change to come, because you have to engage in it, and you have to be there for a multitude of different things. Like, even a lot of Muslims eat halal zabiha, and a lot of Jewish people eat kosher. When we look at food and nutrition for the hospital and the food that we serve, how do we ensure that everyone's being fed the food that they're comfortable with and they can recover with? How can we ensure that, my friend, he was hospitalized, he had a very severe case. They put, in our religion, there's holy water, so they call it zamzam water. They used to put water, because the parents asked, can you put this water in his this specific water, just droplets, for him? And he recovered. And the parents, it made the parents feel better, even though the care was excellent. It made the parents feel better and calmer, knowing that the holy water is being a part of his dietary care, because it brought peace to them, knowing that for them, God is so important, that God is being a part of their care. And how do we do that? How do we kind of bring our community to a forefront? So if you're Muslim or Jewish or from any background, Hindu, this world needs you. This a sphere of public health and healthcare needs you, and you need to be at the table to help advance it, so that the next generation has a better opportunity to take it to further levels. And we're constantly delivering excellence and clinical excellence, administrative excellence, and we're continuously helping everyone and growing for all.
Very, very well put. I couldn't appreciate you more coming on. Thank you so much for joining us and in really explaining your incredible journey, and also giving us such a motivational message at the end there. So I really appreciate you coming on, and hopefully we can have you on again in the future.
Yeah, thank you, Cole, and thank you everyone who's watching. Please reach out if you have any questions about the fellowship or about healthcare at all. I'd love to talk.